Okay. Hi, everyone who joins in today. Just want to introduce you all to Jake Avila. So, Jake is a full-time writer with a BA in writing and information technology. He has a background in freelance journalism, writing on politics, culture, technology, and sport, and taught secondary English for 10 years. In 2019, he won the Adventurer Writers Competition Clive Cluster Grand Master Award for Cave Diver, and then went on to win the Wilbur Smith Adventure Writing Prize for the same book in 2020. So his book is Cave Diver. Hope you can all see that there, and Jake's got it in the background there as well, I can see. And just want to say as well, thanks to Echo Publishing, anyone watching now who asks a question of Jake will have a chance to win a copy of Cave Diver. So any questions you have, please type them in comments and I can read them out. So thanks, Jake, for joining us. Just wondered if you wanted to start off by telling us a bit about Cave Diver.
Sure. Hi, Jackie. Hi, everyone. Thanks for inviting me on. Cave Diver is essentially action adventure, psychological thriller. I guess it's in the vein of Cussler and Wilbur Smith, Len Dayton, Desmond Bagley, that kind of tradition of adventure writers. But I guess it's got a contemporary slant. So it's the story of an acclaimed underwater explorer who's lost his way after the controversial death of his wife in a diving accident. Trying to rebuild his career, he accepts a job to go to Papua on an expedition looking for a long-lost cavern. But what he doesn't know is that the expedition leaders are actually a criminal syndicate looking for treasure. And very quickly, he finds himself in a whole lot of trouble, from man-eating crocs to tribes on the warpath out for payback. And most of all, this flaw that's buried within him, this fear that's based on this on his wife's death, and that's what he's got to confront to triumph.
And I found the story sounded like was really, really real. I'm interested to know, is there anything that is true that you drew from when you were writing this?
I guess nothing directly true.
Yeah.
As a writer, you're kind of tapping into these moments in your life that have resonance, and I guess you amplify them, and you're soaking things up. In terms of veracity, I've been a surfer and I've surfed in some waves, but nothing as big as the wave in the book. And I did scuba diving, but you'd never catch me in a cave.
Yeah, I was wondering if you'd done cave diving. I don't think it's something I could do, too claustrophobic.
Yeah, well, I didn't think I was claustrophobic until I went on board the submarine there at Darling Harbour one day, and I was fine until there were people behind me as well as in front of me, and I suddenly started to get a little bit tense. So when I went to Mount Gambier years ago to do a story on cave diving for Inside Sport, we had to climb down this metal ladder in the middle of a paddock. This hatch was opened, went down, found myself in this sort of muddy cavern, and watching these people go down into this sort of slot in the, I just thought, no, I can't do that. But it planted the seed for a protagonist that could do that.
Yeah. So we've got a few people watching and some questions coming through already, which is really great.
Yeah.
Sharon's wondering how much research you did for your book.
Yeah, look, I guess this is a bucket loads is the short answer. Because I started thinking about this story literally 20 years ago was when I first wrote a couple of pages.
Wow.
But it just sort of sat there in the back of my mind for another 15. But over that period of time, I just grabbed every book I could find on Indonesian, Papua and Papua New Guinea. When it came to the cave diving, I knew I needed technical support. So I was fortunate to get the assistance of the Australian Cave Diving Association, and they were great. I could run my hypotheticals. They could vet my material. And I suppose, nowadays with the internet, that's one of the challenges when you're a writer is you're constantly going, what's the, how many wheels on a C-17 Globemaster aircraft? Oh, just look that up.
Yeah.
And then you kind of, where's the story? Get back to it.
Mm. And Sarah Joy, she said that it sounds like an adult version of Willard Price's style.
Yeah, that rings a bell. I think I remember Willard Price as a boy. Yeah, he had a lot of underwater material.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, actually, I think that's not a bad comparison. I wanted it to be, one of the things I wanted, like I know from growing up with this sort of genre, is that I wanted to be able to really put you there on the spot, really make you feel like you were there. That was one of my points of honor that I wanted to make
And
happen.
I have to say, from reading it myself, you did do a good job of that.
Thank you.
Yeah. Geraldine wonders, what was your inspiration for the story?
Yeah, look, I think there's a couple of things. The first one is I've always had this fascination with lost history, artifacts, anything from an artifact to a whole city turning up, for example, a mined temples, Angkor Wat. And I can remember being in England in '98, we were at Brighton, and I saw West Pier for the first time, which was this, it's now largely burned down, but it was an Edwardian fun pier. It was like this vessel, it looked like a shipwreck washed up on the beach, and the fact that you weren't allowed on made it even more mysterious. And then I'd always had this fascination with Indonesian Papua, particularly because, tourists and journalists aren't welcome there. And it's right on our doorstep. And then we've got this whole World War II angle, which is where the Australians stopped the Japanese invasion. And we're still getting war artifacts, planes, tanks, guns, are constantly showing up. So I sort of thought to myself, wow, imagine if there was something really important or special buried in that jungle. And so that was the very first vision I had, was of a submarine lost in a cavern. And it's funny how what compels a story to keep going, but that was what inspired it originally.
And were you able to travel to that location at all?
Look, I wanted to, and I really did look into it. But I found, short story was, it would have cost me 10 grand to get up the Sepik on a tourist boat.
Yeah, okay.
And I didn't feel quite intrepid enough to chance my arm and hire a canoe.
Yeah.
So so I am interested to see what people who have grown up, because I have spoken to a few people who've grown up there, and see what they think of it.
Yeah. And Belinda's wondering if you're working on anything new at the moment.
Yeah, I'm actually, at the moment, I'm 20,000 words into a sequel for Cave Diver.
Okay.
Simply because the publishers in England and Australia sort of indicated, I had a couple of ideas, they seemed to like the sound of going there first. But the last couple of years I've spent working on a sort of a speculative saga. Book one of that is done, but it's a different genre. So at the moment that's with my agent. So we're just going to see how that rolls.
Yeah. And could you tell us a little bit about how you became a writer? Is it something that you'd always wanted to do?
Yeah, look, in hindsight, I now, you know how you learn about yourself as you age. In hindsight, I now recognize that I was always a storyteller. I can remember my grandmother. I remember writing her a letter when I was a teenager. She was in England, and I sent her a picture of, I wrote about, we went on a spearfishing expedition, and I'd got a couple of rock cod, and I was describing these rock cod to her, and she said to me on the phone, to me like, "Oh, Jakey, you always exaggerate." And I said, "Granny, I sent you the picture." But it was like, I suppose I was always had an eye for that kind of detail. When I was young, it was more cartoons. Everyone thought that's where I'd end up, and I studied graphic design for a while. And then when I went back to uni as a mature age student, I was doing multimedia and IT. That's when I realized where my forte lay. And so I switched to writing, started to write some novels, got some agent interest in New York, which was for a moment incredibly exciting. That got buried. They weren't good enough. I started doing a freelance journalism for a couple of years, but it just didn't pay enough. And so with a family to raise, had to become a teacher.
Yeah, yeah. And could you tell us a little bit about how you actually did get that first book published and how hard or easy it might have been for you?
You talk about Cave Diver?
Yeah,
Yeah. Look, it was when I first finished Cave Diver, I was quite optimistic, having had this previous interest for a much lesser book. Admittedly, quite a long time before, 10 years before. So I sort of thought, wow, I think I've got a good shot at getting an agent or a publisher interested. Wow, was I wrong?
Yeah.
I mean, it was like I don't think I got anything back. And it was like I just kept sending nothing. Eventually the Thai cave rescue happened, and then one person was vaguely interested for about 1 minute. So what I had no choice but to self-publish.
Okay, so yeah.
And as you probably heard before, that's a pretty tough gig. And I likened it to the void where no one can hear you scream. And I felt like I wasn't getting anywhere. And it was those competitions. The first competition sort of got me a little foot, half a toenail on the step. But it was the Wilbur Smith competition that changed everything.
Yeah.
Because because essentially it was, if the book was deemed worthy of publication, you would get a deal. And I can still remember my first meeting with Bonnier in the UK in a Zoom meeting, and my first question was, do you really believe in the book? Am I just getting this because I won?
Yeah.
And they said, no, we wouldn't publish it if we didn't believe in it. And that was probably the most exciting thing of all.
So were you published? You were published overseas before you were published in Australia?
It's sort of simultaneous, Jackie. Like it's coming out tomorrow in Australia, and 2 days later in the UK.
Okay. Yeah. And you did mention a little bit about the Thai cave rescue. Geraldine's wondering if that had any influence when you were writing the book.
Not really, because it was afterwards.
It was after, okay.
Yeah. But it's sort of. But I guess. I mean, it's such an incredible story. I'm sure everyone could agree. And I recently watched an Arm Doe rerun where he did the portrait of the lead cave diver, who was Australian of the Year. I can't remember his name. Powerful. It was one of the best explanations of what makes cave divers tick and what makes them special.
Yeah. And could you tell us what you like reading yourself, and maybe if there was something you've been reading lately that you'd like to recommend to us?
Sure. I'm a pretty, I guess, I mean, eclectic's not the right word. I spend a lot of my time reading non-fiction because of research and ideas. But recently I read The Offing by Benjamin Myers, which is a UK writer who seems to specialise. It's almost like he's a photoreal artist. Imagine lying in a paddock, a field in England, and watching the insects and the flowers and the breeze. The detail is astounding.
Okay.
The other story I read recently, which I know has been around for a while, is Those Shimmering Skies by Trent.
Yes. Yeah,
The Shimmering Sky by Trent Dalton. Fantastic kind of magical realism. World War II, which I'm always interested in. And I started reading Hamnet because my sister-in-law sent it to me. And as a former English teacher, who's got a love of Shakespeare, I think I'm going to enjoy it.
Yeah.
And I also, and I've also started reading The Survivors by Jane Harper.
Oh, yes, yeah.
Yeah. So they're the recent ones.
Yeah, thanks for those recommendations. Could you tell us, like you said that you had an unpublished book. Is that the only unpublished one that you have? And do you think you might ever go back to some of them and try and redo them?
Well, the first two, I doubt it. The first one was this paranormal romance that was, I suppose, a bit colourful. And so that was the one that got the New York interest. And I guess that was sort of in that era where paranormal romance was going gangbusters. But I rewrote that 8 times and eventually binned it. I don't even want to, if I see it on my hard drive, I get like a little shiver of no go there. But I did write a kind of a B grade vampire bikey story set in the Gold Coast, which
Okay.
I kind of have an attachment to.
Yeah.
I kind of could see it finding a home one day,
Yeah.
but I suppose it probably doesn't really fit the genre I'm writing in now.
Yeah. Sounds quite different to the cave diver.
Yeah.
And can you tell us, do you have someone who really encourages you with your writing?
Yeah, look, I've been really fortunate with my support, and the number one support's my wife,
Mm,
who I can't really believe that she's sort of let me do this, because to give up being a head of an English department is a fairly massive drop in salary,
yeah.
like I won't lie, it's been a fairly challenging few years with stress. But she's my number one supporter. Unfortunately, she's an avid reader who loves audio books. So she often likes to just listen to the first draft and and give me feedback. But my whole family, really, the kids and my parents, I've had a lot of support and from friends.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I've got a great circle of friends who have been my beta readers and they're just wonderful, to give you all that time and energy.
Yeah. Yeah. That's great. And do you like showing your work to someone as you're going along and getting advice, or do you wait till you're completely finished and then show it to someone to read?
I show my wife fairly, because she's always asking. So
Mm,
and then what's funny is that, if she has a few, negative impressions, you suddenly find yourself getting tense, even if it's the first draft. But
yeah.
it usually only takes a few minutes till I've seen her point of view, and most of the time she's right.
Mm,
When I'm showing other people, I usually like to wait until I don't have a sort of definitive. Some writers will bang out a first draft just so fast. I'd probably call mine a kind of a 1.5 to almost 2 draft by the time I'm thinking, okay, and then I'll go have a go over,
yeah.
and then I'll hand it to the beta readers. I'm itching to give it to them, but you don't want to give them something that's not quite ready. You want
Yeah.
to make it as fresh as you can or good as you can at that moment.
Yeah. Yeah.
But trying to gauge when it's good enough. I mean, I'm hopefully I'm in a new part of my writing career where I'm going to have some editorial input sooner,
Mm, mm,
because that's one of the challenges. You're on your own, and so how do you know? Like with the Wilbur Smith, I had manuscript development was part of the prize, and there was a serious amount of rewriting went on because of that process,
yeah. Okay.
which made it a better book.
Yeah. Yeah. And Kelly's wondering if you use your wife's recommendations.
Yeah, I'd say a lot of the time.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Because often as the writer, you've got there's something driving you to write that particular moment, and as you're navigating through that chapter, and sometimes it's just little things like, you know, wouldn't they sort of be thinking about this, or would there be an exchange at the moment, just before the penultimate moment, a bit of light relief.
Yeah.
They're usually small things. Unfortunately, when you're dealing with plot demons, which I've had the walls covered in index cards. Usually, that's something you can only figure out yourself.
Mm,
But but that was but editors help too.
yeah. Yeah. And both Geraldine and Belinda, they've both got a similar question. They're wondering if you plan your story from the start, or is it changing all the way through?
I do plan from the start because I'm too scared to just start paddock bashing on the page.
Mm,
But I've learnt that it will change, and things that made sense when you thrashed out a synopsis and a plan don't always work out.
mm, mm,
So it's a combination. You get confidence to start by having a plan, but you allow the plan to change as it needs to change. And as the characters they throw up things, you suddenly find a tangent that makes perfect sense.
yeah.
Or you realize that you've got a bit of a cliche going on and then you need to find something a bit more original.
Mm, mm. And what do you hope that readers will love about your book?
What I hope is that I can give them some genuine escapism, that I can take you and put you somewhere else and get you totally engrossed. I want you to be, thrilled. I want you to be captivated. I want you to want to turn that page. But I guess one of the things that I feel possibly distinguishes my brand of adventure fiction from the rest is that I'm trying to put a lot of energy into the characters so that they really come across as real three-dimensional people. And, I'm trying to get away from, as much as I love an action movie, don't get me wrong, I love them. I don't want to just have your bog standard Navy SEAL running around killing people without, with impunity, without any kind of scar tissue. That's why I want it to be believable. So for me, a great adventure is where I can almost imagine that I'm there in the boat.
Yeah.
I want to feel the spray on my face, the heart pounding, the adrenaline, the rest.
And Kelly's wondering if winning the awards has made your author journey easier.
Absolutely. I mean, as I said before, I was in the void. I call it the void of cyberspace. I think it's something like 6,000 titles I read get uploaded to Amazon daily.
Yeah.
And how do you cut through with that? I mean, I contemplated doing online courses, spending $1,000 to work out how to manipulate the algorithms better to my favor, and marketing and PR. But, to be honest, every little thing has a learning curve, and, you're trying to write books. So to get this sort of validation and get a team working with me has just been so fantastic. It's black and white.
Yeah.
And I did keep going. Like after getting it onto Amazon and after winning Clive Cussler, I spent another 2 years writing this next book that I was telling you about. But I haven't tried marketing that yet. But I knew there's this slightly worrying feeling that maybe no one's going to hear me scream with this one too.
Yeah.
It's just so tough to get noticed out there.
Geraldine's wondering if there's any authors who've influenced your writing.
Yeah, well, that's a good question. I mean, I've got sort of, literary writers like Conrad and Orwell, who and Hemingway, who I could sort of claim some sort of admiration for, an occasional sense of, that's sort of got a feel. In terms of my genre, definitely Desmond Bagley, who's long dead now, but also Wilbur Smith. And it was funnily enough, when I won the Wilbur Smith Award, I said, could you please let Wilbur know that I've got this dog-eared copy of The Eye of the Tiger that I've had since I was a 15-year-old on my shelf. And about every 2 or 3 years, I pick it up just for exactly what I said to you, just the no-holds-barred escapist romp, where it's like Technicolor pouring off the page. So in that genre, he's definitely up there.
Yeah. Geraldine's wondering if you have a daily writing routine.
Yeah, I do. Like today, for example, I banged out 2,000 words in the afternoon and spent about 3 hours in the morning editing yesterday and doing some research to write today. Some days, I never seem to be able to just consistently churn out 2,000. I wish I could. I'm learning. I feel like my process is evolving. I'm trying to become more flexible with the first draft to avoid polishing stuff that's never going to make the printed copy. But it's something you have to learn to let go of, because it's almost like I want to feel good about those 3 chapters, that everything's making sense before I plug on.
Yeah.
But I'm learning that can be counterproductive. So for me, it's a mixture. Editing, research, and writing usually takes up all of a day. And I think I'm spending too long at my desk. I've got a stand-up desk, so I'm spending several hours standing up. But I would like to consolidate and get it down to more like 4 or 5 hours, but usually it's more like 7 or 8.
Yeah, and is writing your full-time job now?
It is, and that's kudos to my wife for allowing me to do that, because as a teacher, you're so strung out. Like when I wrote Cave Diver, I actually was on my long service leave. That's the only way I could do it.
Yeah.
And I had this sort of 10-week solid block and I just thought, right, that's your deadline, and just churned out that draft in that 10 weeks.
Yeah.
I mean, many more months went into it after that, but that got me started.
Yeah. And have any of your students, past students, read any? I know it's only just come out, but yeah, have
Yeah.
any of them
No,
read your book?
yeah, I think some of them did when it was a self-published copy.
Yeah.
I know that some of them did, and I got some kind words and some likes on Facebook. I had some particularly gifted extension to English students who I don't know if it's their genre, but I hope if they see it, they'll pick it up.
Yeah. Kelly's wondering about COVID and lockdown. Has that affected any of your writing, or maybe even made it easier?
I guess it hasn't really affected me beyond worrying about family.
Yeah.
I've got a lot of English relatives who've been in the thick of COVID and are doctors and nurses, and I've got, my children are currently in various lockdowns in Queensland and Sydney, and I was recently almost cut off in Tasmania. So there's like that anxiety, but I've got a very insular world, and you're looking at it basically where I spend most of my time. So I guess it hasn't really hurt me that much. That said, I do feel like everybody else that that chafing at the bit. I would have loved to have gone to England for the Wilbur Smith Prize, and meet the editorial team there, and also and research. Hopefully, I'm hoping to do more on the ground research as moving forward, but we'll see.
Yeah. And what about promoting your book as well?
Yeah, well, look, I mean, again, here's the introverted insular writer, coming out of the shadows, and my attempts at self-promotion were mostly, digital advertising, and nothing really worked, to be honest. So promotions, I'm sort of relying on my fantastic publicist, Emily at Echo, and Karen in the UK, and they sent me lists of things I've got to do, and that's the difference, between having a team and not having a team.
Yeah. And have you been doing a lot of interviews like this?
It's the first week, and this is my fourth interview.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's just sort of beginning.
Yeah. No, that's good.
Apart from that, I did do an interview when I won the Adventure Writers a couple of years ago, but it was only one, and that was from the competition itself.
Yeah. Okay. Sarah Joy's wondering, how did you come up with the cover, or did you have any choice in it at all? And she says that for her, she finds that covers that grab her want her to read them, and if they don't, she really doesn't even want to read them, but she wants to say that your cover really does grab her. She loves your cover.
Oh, I'm so glad, because look, that cover that was produced by the team in England, and when I very first saw it, I thought, oh wow, that looks great. Then there was this split second of the diver's not wearing a rebreather, and that's not a World War II submarine. Then it was like, don't worry about that.
Yeah.
Because it jumps off the shelf, and I love the diver coming at you.
And he wasn't where. Yeah, I wouldn't.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, because who cares? Like, you can learn that in the book in terms of attracting you to the shelf. I'm really glad that she liked it, and it really grabs you, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. Yeah. And what about reviews? How do you go about? Do you like reading all your reviews, or do you try and steer clear of them?
Look, I think I've only read a couple so far. Apart from little ones on good reading on earlier versions. I'm pretty open to them. I mean, to be honest, I haven't had a savaging yet. But it'll probably sting a little bit. But I guess it's like, as an English teacher, I'm very, conversant with subjectivity.
Yeah.
Both with other teachers and with students. So there are things that you're going to be organically drawn to, and there are other things that you're going to have to work at it a bit. And some things we're just different on. So hopefully I won't be too hurt. If there's a bad one.
And Anne's wondering with the cover, is it the same cover in other countries?
Yeah, it's very similar. I think the size of the paperback's slightly different in the UK, and it's Bonnier there, or Bonnier Zafra rather than Echo here, but they're virtually identical. Online, there's still, I've tried to remove all of the old copies, to save confusion,
Yeah.
but there are some old covers floating around on there. There were two iterations, I think, or even three. So
Okay.
I guess they'll vanish as
The
this
new.
book gets
Yeah.
Googled more.
Yeah. So is it quite different from the original one you had?
Yeah, because the first one was just totally an amateur effort on my behalf,
Yeah.
and then a friend of mine who's a lot better with Photoshop, he did the first one. Then he wasn't happy and did the second, he made the whole submarine like a 3D model of the submarine and posed
Oh
it. Did all
wow.
this wonderful
Okay.
stuff.
Yeah.
I'm hoping one day if there's some kind of coffee table edition, we can put a few of his efforts in
The
there.
pictures. Yeah. And before we finish off, just reminding people, if you do have any more questions, please type them in comments and you'll have a chance to win a copy of Cave Diver, thanks to Echo Publishing. While we wait to see if there are any more questions, do you want to let people know how they can keep in touch with you?
Yeah, sure. I've got a website which is jakeavila.com.au. So you can jump on there, and it's like a landing page, but it's got links to my Facebook. And I've just joined Instagram, but I'm on Twitter there too. So that's the first port of call. And then there's obviously the Echo pages and so that's the easiest way. But you can also, there's an email contact form there too.
Yeah. And do you find that you like replying to readers who you have time to reply to readers who reach out to you? And
yeah, look, at this stage, yeah, for sure.
yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm trying to sort of build an audience, so I'm delighted if readers want to contact me.
Yeah. Yep. No, that's great. Thanks so much for talking to us today. And I hope your book, the publication of your book goes really well. And it's out, did you say tomorrow in
Tomorrow,
Australia?
yes.
Yep. So make sure everyone goes out and has a look at Cave Diver. And looking forward to hearing about more from you, and maybe we can have a chance to talk to you another time.
That'd be wonderful, Jackie.
Yep.
Thanks so much.
Thank you, and thanks to everyone who joined in and the questions that people asked.
Yeah, thanks everyone.
Thanks. Bye, everybody.
Okay, bye.